back to That Sales Show. I'm Coach Donna V, and happy holidays to you. I hope you all didn't spend too much money on my present this year. I got my first one from Derek. I'm so excited. Thank you for the spa gift.
You're very welcome.
Today, you know, Derek has such a wide breadth of experience being a leader, a CEO in a startup, and all kinds of advisories. He's been on board of directors, and you know, it was hard to narrow down a topic, but we are going to try very hard today to talk about mindset, courage, and talk about some of the things that Derek as a CEO can share with you folks as you start planning for 2019. And welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me again, Donna. It's really fun to be here with you.
Yes, we had him on before, and we had so many, applause that we were like, let's have him back. So good
I'm
job.
humbled. Yeah,
good
thank
job.
you.
So happy holidays to you.
Same to you.
All right, so let's jump into a couple of things.
Sure.
One is that, and I think we might have talked about this before, is that I have I believe like sales is very much like football and sports. And I had written a blog about Peterson when we won the championship and kind of what happened to that article and everything I said in there, which really the key elements of a good championship team as well as a championship sales team is a great, strong culture, right?
I totally agree.
Courageous mindset, a blueprint for success that is repeatable, understanding, having situational fluency around your ICPs.
Yes.
Right? And then the last one I think I had is a value-driven sales organization. So we've talked a lot about some of those things together, but I want to start actually with what it means to you and maybe to the customer that's experiencing you. What does it really mean to be a value-driven organization?
So we spoke a little bit about this last time, right? The balance of values and value, right? And in my mind, they are separate but related things, right? So
Right.
from the standpoint of building a values-driven organization, right? So you have core values that are guiding the people on your team, how
Yes.
you show up with a customer, how the organization comes across in the marketplace, how it feels, and that ultimately is designed to create trust both between the employees and the customers and prospective customers that you work with, right? And in my mind, that's a fundamental aspect to doing good business, right? And then once you have that as the prerequisite, if you will, then you can start to establish value to a customer in the way that they will interpret that as valuable. And I think that depending on who you speak with, whether it be companies or whether it be individuals in companies, whether it be a B2B sale or a B2C sale, they're going to have different perceptions of what that value is, right? Whether it be helping them get promoted, whether it be helping them to reduce costs, whether it be a particular goal that they've set, whether it be managing their expenses, right? So they're going to define that differently. And then in a sales process, right, which you talked about, the ability to do repeating, that value exchange may change, and the perception of what is valuable over that relationship will change. And so that's a big part of why sales is so relationship oriented, right? Is because you have to be able to adapt to how that relationship evolves with like any relationship, but the factors are at play, right? The needs change, the motivations change, the landscape of competitors and the organizational goals change, right? And so being proactive and being a good listener and being a good relationship builder all is part of how you build a values-driven team and culture from my experience.
Yeah. So can we bring it to the sales,
Sure.
just the sales side now?
Yeah.
So you have, in your business, do you have SDRs?
We've experimented with SDRs, we've experimented with the AE model. We've done different approaches over the life cycle of our business. And depending on who you speak with, there's different merits to different types of those things. I mean, so the SDR model obviously has worked incredibly well in SaaS as a whole. I think for our business, because we are in the learning and development space, education space, I have found that has been less effective overall because of the fact that buyers tend to have a different process for how they buy within HR. And so that oftentimes will actually not have the desired effect. And so developing longer term relationships and leading through the entire sales cycle has actually been more effective. And so trying to use marketing methods to add value earlier on to allow customers to do their own research, to do their own diligence, to vet their own partners or potential partners, and then we're there to help guide and educate them through that process has actually been a bigger value to our success versus having SDRs potentially doing pre-qualifications, moving into demos, and that for us has been a diminishing return. But we've learned a lot of lessons in the process of experimenting with that.
So we'll talk about those lessons in a second, but I want to talk about the value and what you're doing or what you're saying or what types of content are you providing through this. Is it you doing market automation when you say the SDR stuff doesn't really work?
Not necessarily automation, but yeah, I mean, we're using varieties of different formats of content, whether it be video content, whether it be white papers and case studies, or whether it be market analysis that we're doing, where we're aggregating different thought leaders and the different data points that would be helpful. Whether it be in the companies themselves, helping them to do their business plans, right? Literally helping them to build business cases, independent of our solution, helping them understand these are the things to be considering 2 years out, 5 years out. Where's the technology landscape going, and how should they be thinking about their role and their evolution within a company, right? And how we can be there to help be a partner in that process.
So you're getting that content in their hands.
Correct. Well, we're giving them the option to consume that content in their own way. And that goes back to what we do with Scrimmage, right? The idea of mobility, letting people consume it on their phones or their tablets within their time constraints, within their style, right? So if they prefer to read something, or they prefer to watch something, or they prefer to interact with someone, just giving people the option to learn or engage in the way that's most effective or conducive for them. And I think that's where technology is going. It's only going more and more. So that's why Amazon is Amazon, because they've figured out how to create personalized, frictionless experiences, right? And so that's and it's going to continue to move in that direction. But at the same time, I think we've reached this transition point where people really appreciate personal relationships as well, because technology is becoming so ubiquitous that we're losing our human element. And so there's in some ways a throwback to old school business tactics, which is I want to know the person I'm working with, and I want to know that they're going to look out for me in the long run, because I don't want a transactional relationship. And that's where I think finding that healthy balance between using technology effectively and working within human capacity is where companies can distinguish themselves.
So on some of the human side, how are you figuring out what these humans in the human resource departments are consuming? Like, do you have a technology that's showing you what gets consumed the most, or what they're finding valuable about what you're putting forward?
So two parts. So yes, and more importantly, I think the biggest technology is our ears, right? And the ability to actually listen and to seek out feedback and ask questions, which is seeming to be a forgotten part of the process to selling, right? The idea, and there's value in communicating this through technology and giving people content offers and all those types of things, and tracking their clicks and tracking their viewing preferences and measuring all this stuff. And we do that, don't get me wrong. I think there's a lot of value there, because data, you should use the data that's available. However, I think that being able to, again, be in rapport, ears on the ground, like there's a statistic that I think Gartner did, right, that basically talks about B2B sales in particular. You have like 10% of the sales cycle that's human to human oriented. Everything else is being done online, self-directed diligence, pre-selection, RFPs, all these different elements. And so you've got 10% of the overall sales cycle to actually influence a customer. And that's where
coming towards the end. It used to be very much in the beginning, like stage 2, 3, you're talking. You're doing your value proposition, you're showing your features, your functionality. Now everybody does the research on their own.
Correct.
Right? And you're coming in really late in the buying process, so hard to influence.
Unless you can find a way to get in there earlier on, or get in there, and this goes back to why it's a long-term game. I mean, I spoke at a conference last week where I was talking about the fact that I've had relationships, I have relationships now that it took 10 years before we actually did a business together, right? I mean, I was calling in them 10 years ago, and frankly, it was a combination of I wasn't ready to support them as an account or an individual, but B, they just needed to build that much trust and that much relationship equity, and I had to have that much more understanding of their particular business and what they needed in order to actually make that happen. And I think that that's something that in this quarterly earnings, financially motivated world that we live in, people are so short-term focused that we tend to sacrifice the long-term. And I think that's something that, for whatever reason, I understood intuitively at a really young age that this is a long-term game, right? I was 22 years old, and I was imagining what it'd be like to be in business when I was 60. And I don't know why that is, but that was something that I had naturally. And I'm moving on that pathway, and hopefully I can work until I'm 100 if I'm lucky. You know what I mean? So we'll see.
I don't want to live to 100.
Well, it's going to happen. The technology is moving that direction. With the with the healthcare possibilities that are existing right now, the stuff that's going to happen the next 10 years is going to be mind-blowing.
Yeah. So you're adding value through your relationship building, you're adding value through the conversations and giving people a vision of what and how to operate in your space in learning, in e-learning for the customers, and them helping their sales teams and their human resource, whatever departments get up to speed on learning. How are you showing them that? Like, give me an example of what you say to get them to shift their perspective and get them to see in the future, because that's what we're doing, right?
So two things on that. So first off, I don't think there's any one thing that I say that's like a magic trick that convinces them to shift their thinking, right? I think it goes back to just long-term consistent messaging. But also keep in mind, one of the aspirations that we have as Scrimmage is not just training and e-learning, but we're about transforming how people are educated, transforming how people learn, right? So, one of the things that gets us excited, and we're working with clients across the world, but like you look at Southeast Asia, you look at Africa, you look at markets that are coming online with mobile devices for the first time, it's talking about billions of people, and particularly students that are having access to education, and that's a visualization. You can imagine if you were to provide a way to educate them that's more in line with the technology that exists today, and in line with the economic system that exists today and is evolving, and the model of personalization and consumption, you start to imagine, what does that world look like? What does that world look like 20 years from now, right? And so when you think 20 years ahead and you say, okay, we want to move in that direction, how do we start to build that now? Because you have to build in a sequential, or maybe not sequential, but you need to build small in order to achieve big, right? And so that's the balance that goes back to the long term. Like, we're setting out a big vision. We have a big vision for where we want to go, but we need to have the people along the way that see that possibility, and we're going to work with them to build today. And that's just good business. Again, back to business. You find one customer, and then one customer, you do a great job, that becomes a second customer, and you have two customers, that becomes four customers, and then it starts to expand. And that's really, in my experience, in my opinion, how you build quality business. And if you do right by people, and you do right by, and it's a virtuous cycle, right? So it goes around, comes around that way.
We have to go to break.
Sure.
So we're going to take some time, and I want to talk a little bit about establishing value so it doesn't take you 10 years to build a relationship.
Cool.
All right, folks, we're going to be back. We'll see you soon.
There's you and your interview. For less than the cost of a newspaper, direct mail, or a magazine ad, you can leave our studio and within 48 hours have a permanent digital copy of your live segment to link to your social media, embed into your company website, or use in email marketing. Investing in your brand is so very important, and we can't wait to have you as a guest.
Shelter dogs aren't broken. They've simply experienced more life. If they were human, we would call them wise. They would be the ones with tales to tell and stories to write. The ones dealt a bad hand who responded with courage. Do not pity a shelter dog. Adopt one.
Say we've got grit, and we'll take it as a compliment. Because it's our uncommon drive, our spark within, that brings us together and sets us apart. We are temple made. And when others take shortcuts, when others take breaks, when others take the easy way, we take charge.
I work 13 hours a day, 6 days a week. So when I'm off the clock, I gotta get stuff done. So when I need a snack, I need something healthy, tasty, and easy to eat. Like wonderful pistachios without the shells. They're protein-powered, delicious, and great on the go. And that's perfect for me. Thanks, Liz. A woman without a lot of time.
Whether you're a gourmet cook or just want to eat like one, visit Rostelli Market Fresh, your home for the freshest, locally sourced ingredients to please everyone who loves great food. Our organic meats, quality seafood, and free-range poultry are cut fresh to order. Chefs create culinary-inspired prep foods made fresh every day, which pair nicely with our vast selection of fine wines and spirits. Choose from handmade pastas, artisan cheeses, organic produce, and grocery items, all from the finest purveyors. Rostelli Market Fresh, from our family to yours.
RVN TV is a platform for people of any industry to share their story. Over 285,000 viewers are tuning in to RVN TV shows monthly. We guarantee a great experience that you'll be sharing with everyone you know while increasing your personal and company's brand awareness. But what is your brand? According to Forbes, it's a combination of your logo, your product, your design and feel, and your personality. Did you know that aside from being a guest, we offer even more opportunity to boost your brand? Adding your company logo and website on screen during your interview will allow viewers to recognize your brand instantly. Incorporating images and video clips is another great way to showcase your product during your live segment. Let viewers see how good you really are. And most importantly, there's you and your interview. For less than the cost of a newspaper, direct mail, or a magazine ad, you can leave our studio and within 48 hours have a permanent digital copy of your live segment to link to your social media, embed into your company website, or use in email marketing. Investing in your brand is so very important, and we can't wait to have you as a guest.
Shelter dogs aren't broken. They've simply experienced more life. If they were human, we would call them wise. They would be the ones with tales to tell and stories to write, the ones dealt a bad hand who responded with courage. Do not pity a shelter dog. Adopt one.
Say we've got grit, and we'll take it as a compliment. Because it's our uncommon drive, our spark within, that brings us together and sets us apart. We are temple made. And when others take shortcuts, when others take breaks, when others take the easy way, we take charge.
I work 13 hours a day, 6 days a week. So when I'm off the clock, I gotta get stuff done. So when I need a snack, I need something healthy, tasty, and easy to eat. Like wonderful pistachios without the shells. They're protein-powered, delicious, and great on the go. And that's perfect for me. Thanks, Liz. A woman without a lot of time.
Whether you're a gourmet cook or just want to eat like one, visit Rostelli Market Fresh, your home for the freshest, locally sourced ingredients to please everyone who loves great food. Our organic meats, quality seafood, and free-range poultry are cut fresh to order. Chefs create culinary-inspired prep foods made fresh every day, which pair nicely with our vast selection of fine wines and spirits. Choose from handmade pastas, artisan cheeses, organic produce, and grocery items, all from the finest purveyors. Rostelli Market Fresh, from our family to yours.
RVN TV is a platform for people of any industry to share their story. Over 285,000 viewers are tuning in.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Donna Valente, Coach V, and I am actually a leadership and sales coach with Business Development University. And one thing I forgot to do early on was to introduce Derek's company. He is the CEO of Scrimmage, and I want to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about what that is.
Thank
I'm so
you.
sorry.
So Scrimmage is a platform for education and training to make it more personalized, engaging, and fun, delivered via a learner's mobile devices, their phones and their tablets. That's what we do.
So who's buying that content, by the way?
Mostly it's large companies right now.
Okay.
So we work with Fortune 100 companies to help them educate their new hires, to help them educate their sales professionals, their leadership on whatever topic or content is relevant. We also work with startups. We work with increasingly small, mid-sized businesses as well. So we want to work with everyone who wants to be educated.
That's great. That's awesome. All right, so let's go back to the adding short-term value to get yourself inserted into a sales process.
Yeah. So so you and I have talked before. I mean, obviously, building relationships over the long term is I think a really important point. But you also need to build your business and your pipeline in the short run. And the way that you do that is by, again, being in front of those customers, networking in the account, understanding who has authority and who has influence to make decisions, understanding their life cycle for how they make decisions, right? So there's a lot of accounts out there, right? So you have to focus your time on the accounts that can actually make a decision in the next 6 to 12 to 18 months. And then once you do that, you can spend time in those accounts and understand how do you get involved in the process for which they would make a decision to either buy your product as the initial one or to make a switch from an incumbent partner or vendor to come to your product. And that's the balance, and then just being present and, again, understanding what they perceive to be valuable and giving them as much and more than that as possible to make sure that you are the vendor and partner that they ultimately choose.
So when you first started out, you had how many employees?
When we started out, we had 0 employees, right? So
but you had no other salesperson.
So we grew the business. I mean, we started small, and now you keep building the business as you go, based on the number of clients that you could support. You bring on more people, right?
So you have a field team that goes out and tries to understand the account, goes in, and okay.
Yeah. So our team is made up of developers that are building the product, made up of client success that are working with existing customers and helping to expand and support those relationships more fully, and then sales and marketing that is responsible for generating new business opportunities.
Right. And so the value just goes all along the chain, from marketing as the air cover.
They all play a role, right? Everyone has a role on the team. Everyone has a role in the process, right? And so that's the way that, and when you can optimize and find efficiencies for those different parts of the process, then you get better. And like I said before, it's you learn a lot of lessons along the way. A lot of mistakes we make along the way. We've made along the way, and we learn and we adjust and we look to improve and
learn by doing.
We talked about that too. Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah. Okay. So, here comes 2019.
Yeah.
And there's probably a lot of people who are in a startup or getting ready to go into a growth mode. What lessons have you learned that you could share with them so they can kind of incorporate these processes or structures to increase their potential success?
So many lessons. So where to begin? I don't even know. But so one thing that I would say is that be uncompromising in the end goal of what you want to accomplish. So just no matter what, and we talked about this last time, just completely unwavering commitment to whatever it is that you're setting out to do. But flexibility in the approach, right? Recognizing that there's always going to be things that will change. There's always unforeseen obstacles. You have to manage people, and that can always be an interesting, complex aspect to the business. And then that's the second piece, is make the effort to keep it as simple as possible for as long as possible. Because the simpler that you can make things, the easier it is to scale that, because you can train people, you can hire more effectively, you can make the experience for customers that much better. What I see a lot of times as companies grow is that when you build processes, it increases complexity, right? So it's
hard for the customer.
It makes it hard for the customer, it's hard for the team, and so it creates room for error, if you want to call it that, because there's just a lack of clarity. So the more that you can provide a path for simplicity, the better, in my opinion.
Give an example of simplicity for people who are complex and analytic and
even sales processes, right? I mean, like that. If you can over-engineer a sales process, right? That goes back to the more effective way would be just support clients to make sure that they're satisfied and happy. And how do you do that? You listen to them, and then you work backward to create a model and replicate that. Like that's just one example.
Yeah, that's a good one.
But I mean, there's a lot of things. I mean, and then as a CEO, you're focused on the fundamentals. I mean, as a CEO, I consider my responsibility to do a few things. One, set the vision and culture, right? Two, make sure the business stays in business, manage the operational, parts of the company, the cash flow, the revenue, the expenses, make sure that that's all happening so that we can continue to operate. Like that's a critical factor that starts with me. And then the third is to be an advocate for, the brand, the organization, the vision, and the people on the team and our customers, right? Those are like three, keeping it simple, those are three things that I challenge myself to be really, really good at and be ruthless with them not being good, to improve, right? And then continue to work on that. And then same thing, try to keep it simple for the different people on the team. What are the top three things that they need to do to be successful, to contribute to the bigger vision, right? And so the more that you can do that, in my experience, the better you will be.
So not a checklist of 20. Keep it to 3
Keep
to
it simple.
5. Yeah.
Keep it simple.
So the other question I want to ask you is, you know, sometimes, a lot of times, when it's a startup company, people like to talk to the CEO. When do you go into the sales conversation or get inserted into as process as an executive sponsor?
I mean, I'm always there in some capacity, right? And so, I mean, I think that goes back to, I think if you look at big companies as well, I mean, your job as a CEO is to be in front of customers. You're there to listen to what your customers need, what they're asking for, what they want, what they're not happy with. You can see your team, you know, firsthand and what's happening. I mean, there's the whole, the old management philosophy, you know, management by walking around, right? So I mean, like, that's part of the whole process. It's the same thing, right? So you need to be present, you need to be available, you need to be accessible. And I make an effort to be out there, whether it be going to actual meetings, leading pitches, supporting pitches, being available and accessible on social media. That's a great vehicle now for people to have access to anyone. I mean, you can reach anyone now, literally, within, you know, 1 or 2 connections of who you are. And so the access that anyone has right now is really, really, you know, unfathomable compared to where it was 20 years ago, even. And so now it just goes back to understanding how to stand out, understand how to truly add value, how to truly be of integrity that people want to do business with you.
Mm-hmm. So what are the other lessons? I kind of got off track there a little bit. Let's see. The winning mindset you kind of talked about in the well-crafted strategy.
Well, the winning mindset goes back to, again, just complete persistence, right? That you're just going to withstand every challenge that comes your way and accept and embrace those challenges as lessons. And even when it feels really painful and it feels like it's a failure, and, you know, in some ways it is, you have to just look at that and say, you know, keep moving forward, right? It's only temporary. It's only, you know, it's only a failure if you quit, right? As long as you can take that and integrate that feedback and you know, work with the people around you to improve, there's still an opportunity to be successful.
Yeah. So you're a CEO, you're a startup, you're like, oh my God, I only have like 10 customers and I think I'm ready to throw in the towel, and you're feeling all this kind of pressure, and somewhere in the back of your mind, it's like, I don't want to give up yet, but I don't know if I can continue at this rate. Have you been there with Scrimmage?
I mean, not exactly that narrative, but yeah, I mean, that's a narrative that I haven't had exactly where I'm like, I feel like I want to quit, but like there's been points where I'm like, man, there's so much pressure and I've never experienced this before, and how do I do that? And I think that just goes back to ask for help, reach out to people that are in your network that have been there, reach out to people that are further along in this game of business, right? I mean, there's a lot of really successful people out there that, you know, one of the benefits to doing that is that you get the chance to share those lessons with people who are going through it for the first time, right? And so I think that's you know, when you do that, you tend to find fuel, you get creative solutions, you get ideas you hadn't considered. It forces you to be humble. It forces you to be acknowledging the reality of where you are, what's strong, what's not, and, you know, just keep going. That's the biggest word of advice that I would give, and that I continue to heed myself, is just keep pursuing, keep pushing, no matter what.
Mm-hmm. So what else can we cover around that? So the discipline to execute, I think we covered some of that. So then what other things do you think are like the strongest lessons that you learned, that where you had to deviate, a situation where you saw something happen and you had to overcome it and you had to rethink some of maybe the product solution or who your market was?
Sure. I mean, I'll tell you point blank. I mean, several years ago, you know, this was a lesson that I learned. I got a little ahead of my skis on the financial side of things, right? I mean, certain deals that I thought were going to come in didn't come in as intended. You know, I'd made decisions to hire people and make investments in the team that I thought were the right decision, and in some ways they were, but they also were limited, right? So I mean, we were right on the verge of you know, not making it, and I had to make some really tough choices and have some really hard conversations with our team regarding where I had, you know, frankly missed the mark, right? And how I had miscalculated, misestimated, and I had to you know, come up with some adjustments to structure the company to weather that and get through that window. And it was a really challenging time. I mean, it was a challenging time personally. It was a challenging time for the company. You know, I really felt that I had let my team down. I felt I had let my partners down. You know, it felt really risky. But you know, I was able to find a way to persevere, keep going. You know, receive help, just be really vulnerable around where I had, you know, made the mistake and how I was looking to fix it. and continue to work on the lessons to achieve that. And again, every leader, I would imagine, goes through some form of this process, whether it be cash flow or customer churn or hiring the right people and losing those people, right? All of that stuff. I mean, this is it's not a straight line, right? And so. I think that that's one
I've been
example.
there. I worked for a company. I think every November we had probably like 15 people get laid off, 20 people get laid off because we were waiting for a round of funding that didn't come in. A couple months later, we brought everybody back, and there's a lot of things that everybody who's left. Has to keep heads down and continue to do the business. That's all a pay grade over our head. Let's keep doing business as usual, and the funding will come in. Let the CEO do what she has to do.
And it's incredibly hard to do that. I mean, because you were literally, those are people's lives, right? People were making decisions on for their families and for their futures, and they're buying into a vision. They're buying into a future that you're creating, and that I personally really believe in and believed in, and other CEOs personally believe in. But that's a really fine line for. Because I can tell you, my experience, most entrepreneurs, most CEOs really do want to do right by their teams, but it's the realities of business are challenging, and so everyone has their own motivations, right? Everyone has their own values, everyone has their own value, and to build around that, and to inspire around that, and to manage to that, that's a lesson in daily practice, right? And daily practice of management, of self-management, and of humility and growth.
Yeah. I just adore you.
Thank
you.
you.
I have one more question. We have to wrap it up, but I do want to ask, actually two things. But one is, every leader has, or a CEO or player or some high performance person has some kind of coach. Who do you bounce off your, to get clarity or to get some perspective to get you back rooted into your bigger vision?
So I've worked with several coaches one-on-one over the course of my career, especially being an entrepreneur and CEO. I've also worked with a number of peer groups with other CEOs that's for that purpose where we do that. I continue to participate in those groups, in different ones, and seek out new people that are doing much more than I am and what I want to achieve. And so just always be learning, always be humble, always be listening, and then vice versa, be willing to give the same lessons back to the people who are experiencing it for the first time. And so I make it a priority to mentor young entrepreneurs when they reach out to me, or other CEOs if they're asking for help, or anything I can do.
Be gracious, man. Give it back.
100%.
It is. Pay it forward.
Yeah.
Well, last thing, just tell everybody how we can get a hold of you and learn more about Scrimmage.
Yeah, again, so online we're WeScrimmage.com, on social media @WeScrimmage. I'm on all those different channels personally, so happy to talk and interact with anyone.
That's
help
awesome.
them.
Well, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
It was
Always
so
a pleasure,
great.
Donna.
It's always great. Thank you, everyone. I hope you have great holiday festivities going on this week. Don't forget to buy me a present, and we'll see you next Wednesday.